Hey everybody, so I read an article yesterday in the Detroit Free Press, and they were talking about the autonomous Uber cars that have been launched in Pittsburgh and what the impact of that is going to be on those who drive for a living. So currently the cars are from Volvo, but they're occupied by a human at this point. So I guess the way it works is you go on the app, you request an Uber, and you are randomly selected to receive one of these autonomous Uber cars with a human in it at this point. And I guess it's a free ride right now just because they're initiating it. So it's free, but it's not something you can request or whatever. It's just a random thing. So what this article points out is they're saying it's going to be devastating for those who are driving, because those people who are in the driving field have moved away from manufacturing, because that used to be sort of the way to get money. If you want to have a family and stuff, you just went to work at the factories and stuff. Well, most of those have kind of dried up, and the ones that are left don't really pay a whole lot. So a lot of people have kind of moved over into the driving field because the driving field makes more money. So, semi drivers, truck drivers, taxi drivers, all these kinds of drivers. So what Uber wants to do is they want to make their car service autonomous. So people request a ride, an autonomous Uber shows up, takes you where you need to go, and then goes on to the next call. Sort of like a cab without the driver. But I guess they also want to move into the semi world, and they want to get rid of the, or at least assist with truck driving. And so a lot of people are really up in arms about this. And there's, what was really interesting about this article that I read, it said that the cab drivers that are driving for Uber or other cab companies are really upset at this point, because what they're saying is that they have went above and beyond and have educated themselves on how to use technology. So, like GPS apps or, using a smartphone or whatever, because they're using them in the Ubers or the taxis or the semis or whatever. And so that's what their defense is. They're saying, well, you know what, we've already went above and beyond to learn how to do these things, so it's not really fair, that they're now trying to make these cars autonomous, and we're going to lose our jobs and stuff like that. But the thing that I find to be really interesting is those comments, because I think that no matter what profession you're in currently, you're dealing with these things, no matter what kind of field you're in, you're constantly learning, you're constantly educating yourself and keeping up with what's going on. If you go to school for like computer science, if you learned on Windows 7 or whatever, that's not going to sustain you through the next 30 years of your career. Every profession's like that. Like my profession, for example, we constantly have to keep up with the research, because, as more research and more science comes out, our, stance on things evolve. And that just happens with every profession. So I guess really what my question is like, what do you think about all of this? I can understand. I don't think anybody wants to lose their job, especially a huge industry like that, because it's everywhere. As I've said on this app many times, I grew up in Flint. My whole family worked at GM, and, I've seen what that's done to the community. And, therefore, when I was old enough, I pretty much knew that wasn't a possibility for me, so I looked into other things. So I think that might be just this, our economies constantly evolve, and we used to have people that would come around and sharpen our scissors and our knives and stuff, and we don't do that anymore. I mean, it's just a constant evolving. And as far as manufacturing goes, I know somebody that works in a manufacturing facility, and the dream of the CEO, and I'm sure it's not just him, is to make the plant completely robotic. So I think that technology is going to take over many professions, and so I don't think it's just exclusive to these fields. So I don't know. I'm just kind of mixed on how I feel about this. So what do you guys think?
Good morning, Lucy. Very interesting and thought-provoking post, but the Uber drivers have no reason to feel singled out. There's a lot of jobs now that are going to be automated. Society is going to have to take a close look at how we reward people and how we sustain people. There's still going to be, for the foreseeable future, plenty of things that humans can do that technology has not yet supplanted us in doing. The issue is finding the right match of doing those things and people who are willing to have those things done. It would be very selfish on the part of Uber drivers, for example, to insist that for their benefit only, that self-driving cars not be out on the roads, or self-driving trucks, even though they would drive them, they being the Uber, the humans would drive them much less safely. But none of these Uber drivers who is complaining and upset about the future is going to have their job displaced in the next 10 years. The field is not going to advance that quickly. But some countries are actually considering, for example, the guaranteed. This was something that derailed George McGovern's presidency, but a guaranteed annual income to support people during those periods of transition. I do think that the days of working 30, 40, 50 years for a company, doing a job or a couple jobs, are going away because things are changing more quickly. But look at the environmental cleanup that has to be done. Look at the mentoring that has to be done to help kids that are just being left behind, and look at the infrastructure that's not being built. Machines can help, but humans are an indispensable part of that. There's lots of things that us humans whose jobs are taken away can keep ourselves more than busy doing, and many of them are more exciting jobs, less mindless jobs than delivering packages for UPS, or just turn here, following what our GPS is telling us to do. That's a pretty mindless job, actually. I'm not saying it isn't worth what people are getting paid for it, but if technology can do it better, it ought to be. And we ought to just embrace the chance to do jobs worth doing, and figure out, and society needs to help us so that we're sustained in the process.
Hey there, this is Joe. I think I'm with Gabe on this one as far as I don't think I'm in a hot hurry to jump into an autonomous vehicle, just because the technology is very, very new. And I'm not doubting the technology, but it's still, very new technology, and I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of the fail safes. I've been in vehicles where they've totally lost power, and
Groupon. Item you viewed is up to $20 cheaper today. Apple iPhone 6s or 6s Plus. GSM unlocked. Refurbished.
that's good to know. If you want an iPhone 6s or 6s Plus on Groupon, it's $20 less, refurbished. Anyway, actually,
Speech off.
there we go. Now you don't hear any more Groupon sales. So I've been in a car a couple times where we've lost power, totally lost power, and you have, driver has to struggle because you have no more power steering, you have no more power brakes, you have to struggle to get control of the car and safely bring it to the side of the road. And if you're on a major highway where it's 55, 65, 70 miles per hour speed limit and you're going that fast and all of a sudden you lose power, what's the fail safe on the vehicle to deal with that? What's the redundancy? I don't know, what's built into those autonomous cars. So it makes me a little bit reluctant at this point to jump into one. As far as a revolt by taxi drivers in general against Uber, I can speak to, probably in a lot of major cities, but certainly here in New York City, the infamous New York City yellow cabs. In order to drive one of those, you have to have a medallion. And those medallions, up until a couple of years ago, were worth, I don't know what they were worth, but I think they were worth over $1 million. Not sure, maybe three-quarters, $750,000. Very, very expensive. I mean, 30 years ago, they were worth a few $100,000. So I don't know what they were worth, but that it's an asset. People apply for mortgages, and that's actually an asset, and they pay these things off, and they've invested a lot of money in these, and they have substantially lost value because of Uber. And Uber wasn't required to, their drivers aren't required to get anything to drive in some of these major metropolitan areas. A friend of mine who lives in Australia mentioned that I think their licenses, or what's equivalent to a New York City medallion, was worth like 500,000. Used to be 500,000 Aussie dollars, and it's down to 100,000. The value of them is now down like almost 80%, and it's down to 100,000 Aussie dollars. That's substantial. That is substantial. And where are these major metropolitan areas saying, well, if you want to drive here, you have to get some sort of kind of license as well. Because they categorize it as a ride share as opposed to a taxi. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a taxi service. You call for an Uber car, someone comes and drives you from point A to point B, and pays you a fee. I mean, that's what it is, and they skirt around this, and I don't think that really should be. So, I can understand why, certainly those drivers are upset. I think drivers in most major cities, I don't know how much impact that the Uber drivers are having on, the fares themselves. Like, how yellow cabs are, doing as far as if it's having an impact on their day-to-day business. Maybe it does to a certain percentage, but I don't know at what point, to what extent that is happening right now. I've not honestly read a lot, but yeah, and maybe it's having a major impact. And if so, where do these people go? You're that's the problem with automation and autonomous vehicles. One thing is having Uber drivers that have people driving, but all this autonomous stuff and all this automation, where are these people going? What's their new job that they are going to do? You're losing factory jobs to China and Asia and Mexico because the wages are cheaper, and to some extent, I think that's some of that. Some of the labor unions kind of dug themselves in a hole, and on that one, and sort of created that. But a lot of manufacturing is going away. Now what manufacturing may be still left here in the States may go automated. What happens to these people? So we have to look at, from a societal standpoint, we have to look around and say, if all of a sudden, every cab you get, it doesn't have a driver in it. A lot of the manufacturing is handled automatic. What is it that those people that had those jobs, what is the job that they are going to do now? The reality is, if you're in something where you work with computers and you do something along those lines, you can probably migrate into some other field where where you can utilize technology. But for a lot of people, they don't have that skill set. They just don't have that skill set or the ability to kind of acquire those skill sets. Not everybody's technically inclined. Even on the most basic levels, they're just not technically inclined. And I don't know what. And the crazy thing is this technology is developing just at such an exponential rate. Who would have thought 10 years ago you would have had an automated, autonomous car on the road? On the road. We're talking about autonomous planes. Autonomous planes, autonomous cars, autonomous trucks. It might be even, who knows, autonomous trains soon. You could have you could have all of your domestic, all the stuff from domestic manufacturing, everything that you transport, all the transportation stuff, via train, via truck, hell, via ship. You could, potentially in, who knows, 10 years' time, be doing that all autonomously. And basically have the whole transportation sector unemployed. So it's an interesting question, and I think the bigger question is, what do those people do moving forward? What do those people do moving forward?
Well, I think there's a place for technology, but there's also a place for people being able to work and earn a living. I mean, if it comes down to it, where people aren't able to make a living, You're going to see a lot of people in poverty and stuff like that. And you know, I've met a lot of wonderful Uber drivers over the course of 5 or 6 months. And you know, the sad thing of it is that if this does succeed all over the place, those people that I know are going to end up losing their jobs, and some of them are not in the best of situations, and you know, others do it for a part-time job or so on and so forth. But you know, I really don't know if I like the idea of it or not. I know where Uber's coming from. They don't have to pay drivers if this works out. But, you know, if it comes down to it one day where a lot of companies and stuff like that depend on their technology and get rid of their staff, well, they're not going to get many buyers either, because people aren't going to have enough money to make a living. So, who knows? I hope it doesn't come to that one day, but it's looking like it might. So, anyway, and too, you count, like, as far as the Uber situation goes, they're trying these out in Pittsburgh. You know, if you're legally blind or something like that, like many of us are, sometimes too, I know that it gets it where, you know, you can't see the car pull up, and some people don't speak up, you know, which I've learned to call my Uber driver when I've got an Uber, and said, hey, I am legally blind, so whenever you pull up, I need you to at least let me know that you're here, because I'm not going to be able to see you to know that you're an Uber. So most of them are good about calling me, letting me know, hey, I'm here, or not calling me per se, but even calling out to me if I'm sitting outside, and that's how I know they're here. So anyway, hope you're doing well, and hope you have a great day. Bye for now.
Hey, Lucy, I have no doubt that this revolution is coming. There's just too many of the big players who are involved in autonomous driving research. And if you look at it from Uber's point of view, I mean, I think they pay their drivers roughly 20%. I'm oversimplifying here, obviously, but if I can go from 80% revenue to 100% revenue, I mean, that's, or, you know, 95% revenue or whatever, when you allow then for the cost of the cars and the gas or whatever it is. I mean, I just think there's a reason that all these people are pointing toward this. And this is just sort of the history of the country. You know, there was a time when telephone operators were involved in every phone call that you made. And now there are virtually no telephone operators because, you know, we don't need them. There was a time when people filed, and, you know, that there was a file clerk in the office, and, you know, there was all this paperwork, and there was a librarian basically in charge of all these files and filing, you know, getting the Smith folder where it needed to go and all that kind of stuff. Now, you know, everything is just done on computer. I don't think you're going to change that. But I do really get concerned, whether it's President Trump or President Bernie Sanders or whoever it is. I mean, what happens when the truck driver jobs go away? What happens when the McDonald's jobs go away because there'll be a robot, an automated server, which will be, you know, frying your fries and handling your food and taking your change or making change. I just think more and more of these kinds of lower skill jobs, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say that, but I just think there's more and more of these jobs are going to go away, and the automation, the machinery is more reliable than people. I mean, the machinery doesn't get sick, the machinery doesn't take days off, the machinery doesn't have a child who is ill at home, so they have to call in sick or take a day off. I mean, there's just so many things at play here. So it really does concern me where this is going, and I think that's a sort of another reason for me to say that education is absolutely paramount. It's really important that kids be prepared for a lot of things, because there's going to be so many changes that you and I can't even imagine, as time goes on. But I think the Uber drivers who are upset about this, I think they're like so many other people. If you trained to be a nurse or a doctor in 1972 and you've been working since you were 22 years old, those skills really won't. I mean, there are some things that will translate, but you clearly have to know so many more things, and you have to approach things differently and do things differently than you did when you came out of school in 1972. I mean, it's the world just changes, and I think the Uber drivers who are upset about this are really in the same class with millions and millions of other people who have lost their jobs. The paradigms have changed, and you have to find a way to adjust to it somehow. I'm really concerned about where the jobs are going to come from, but I don't think we're going to stop it. I think we're not going to hold back progress, and I think it's going to happen.
My thoughts on this change that's occurring now with autonomous vehicles is that's progress. I mean, that is technology changing our society, and it's what's happened in the past, and people have had to learn to deal with those changes, and they themselves have had to evolve in terms of their training, their education. All of those things are important when society endures this sort of change, and this is going to be a really huge one. I don't think we even recognize right now just how big of a change this is going to have on our society. When I first heard about the Google car, when they first started developing the technology for an autonomous vehicle, those thoughts popped into my mind immediately. I was thinking, one of the first jobs to go is going to be those people who drive 18-wheelers and do shipments. I was going to be one of the first ones, and I mean, it wasn't but a couple of years after that when I heard about, I'm not sure which company was doing it, but there was a company already developing an autonomous system for an 18-wheeler and have it drive across country. And it's no surprise that companies like Uber and Lyft and others are going to invest in this technology and apply it towards cab services and the like. And it's just something that we all have to deal with, especially if we're in that field, obviously, or in that industry, that we're going to have to find other forms of employment, because this is a technology that's going to continue to evolve and get better. And I have no doubt that we're going to see cars driving around picking up people by themselves. And the same thing for truck deliveries. And then, just for ourselves, more and more people will get used to the idea of having a car drive them around. But this is not something that's going to happen overnight. Even in the next 10 years, I mean, we're not going to see, at least I don't think so. I don't think we're going to have fully 100% autonomous taxis and Ubers driving around picking people up, because you're going to have a segment of the population that is hesitant to use or ride around in automated vehicles, and they don't trust them, and it's going to take time for society to accept the technology as being safe and being willing to utilize those services where automated vehicles are used. So we're going to see a lot of changes in the coming years, and the technology is going to continue to improve and get better. And when that happens, once we get to a point where these vehicles are reasonably safe, cab drivers are going to have to find other forms of employment. Uber drivers are going to have to find other forms of employment. It's just the way things work in our society.